All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack how a tiny 24-mile stretch of water could and maybe will become the absolute epicenter of a global economic earthquake. So picture this. The year is 2026. Tensions that have been simmering for years, they finally just boil over. A major war kicks off, pulling in the United States, Israel, and Iran, and suddenly the entire world is holding its breath. But beyond the big headlines about military strikes and political chess moves, the real war, the one that actually affects every single person on this planet, is being fought in a very specific and surprisingly small place. And that place is the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to look at exactly why the closure of this one waterway sends these massive, immediate shockwaves all across the globe. First, just to get a sense of the scale here, at its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz, which is the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, is just 24 miles wide. That's it, a tiny little bottleneck with absolutely immense global importance. So why does this little channel matter so much? Well, because a staggering 20%, that's 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply has to pass through it, every single day. When that flow stops, the entire world feels it, and it feels it instantly. And listen, this isn't just an energy story, not at all. The countries right there in the Gulf also export nearly half of the world's urea. And urea is a key ingredient in fertilizer. So this reveals a huge vulnerability, right? This conflict isn't just about gas for your car, it's also about the global food supply. Okay, so what happens when this choke point gets squeezed shut? Let's follow the economic chaos from the big global markets right down to what's in your wallet. Now, what's really wild is just how fast everything reacts. The second the strait is disrupted, crude oil prices just skyrocket. You see this jump from around $64 a barrel to over 90, with peaks hitting 120 bucks. For you and me, that's basically like a massive instant tax every single time we go to fill up the car. And this chart here does a brilliant job of showing that the pain doesn't just stop at the pump. I mean, look at this. Oil and gas are the foundational building blocks for a mind-boggling range of products. Plastics, medicines, electronics, clothes, you name it. So when energy costs go up, the cost of, well, pretty much everything goes up with it. Now, you might be thinking, hey, wait, the US is the world's biggest energy producer, so we should be okay, right? But here's the thing. Having a cushion isn't the same as being immune. Oil is a global commodity, period. So when global prices spike, it hits the purchasing power of American consumers and slows down the whole economy. No one is safe from the shock. Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's go from the economic war to the really unique military strategy that's at play here. Because Iran isn't fighting this war alone. It's flipping the switch on a whole complex network of allies. And that network is known as the Axis of Resistance. It's essentially a web of powerful groups all across the region that share Iran's worldview and get its support. They basically act as force multipliers, letting Iran project its power way, way beyond its own borders. So the three main players in this axis are Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi movement down in Yemen, and a collection of Iran-aligned militias in Iraq that go by the name of the Popular Mobilization Forces. Each one brings something unique to the table, both geographically and politically. For Hezbollah, jumping into the fight is a chance to burnish its reputation as a resistance force against Israel. But it's a super tricky balancing act. Back at home, they are under immense pressure from a Lebanese government that desperately wants to avoid being dragged into another devastating, all-out war. Meanwhile, the Houthis in Yemen, they control another critical sea lane, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So they could add a ton of pressure on global shipping, but they're hesitant. A big escalation could easily reignite a brutal war with their powerful neighbors, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and that's a risk they really want to avoid. Now, a conflict like this doesn't happen in a bubble, right? It immediately gets sucked into the larger geopolitical game being played between the world's great powers. It becomes a piece on a global chessboard. And this is where a regional fight completely reshuffles the global deck. China is hugely dependent on energy from the Gulf. Suddenly, it finds itself in a much, much weaker position. And this really hurts its hand in those high-stakes negotiations with Washington. We're talking about everything from the race for AI to getting access to critical minerals. Okay, let's pull all these different threads together. What does this new type of conflict, this blend of economic warfare and proxy battles, actually mean for the future? You can really break down Iran's strategy into three pretty clear parts. First, physically block the choke point. Second, stir up regional chaos by activating its proxy network. And third, weaponize the global economic pain that follows to put political pressure on its enemies. It's a classic asymmetric strategy, right? Using smaller, unconventional tactics to hit the weak spots of a bigger opponent. And in this case, the weakness is our interconnected global economy, and Iran is turning it into a weapon. And the long-term impact of this is, well, it's profound. As one market analysis put it, we could be entering a whole new era. This isn't just a temporary blip on the radar, it's a fundamental reset. It means the basic cost of just moving stuff and securing energy around the world gets permanently higher. For everyone. And all of this leads to one final, pretty unsettling question. If this kind of hybrid war, mixing economic blockades with proxy fighters, is the new playbook, are we watching the end of the relatively stable global system we've all gotten used to? In other words, is a world of permanent disruption the new normal?